All right, we are back in the booth on Sunday afternoon, and we are going to be doing a Biggs swim bait in blueback herring. So what I've done is it already came with the eyes on it. I've went ahead and taped those off and taped off the tail, and I'm going to put a coat of House of Colors white base coat on it to start. We're going to be doing this in parts, so you're going to have to bear with me on this. Let's turn our fans on. And let's go ahead and get a base coat of this on here. These resin baits are a lot different to paint, but they're not as smooth. We're going to put a couple base coats on it. Just make sure we get it covered. It's got those like gill type plates on it. So we'll let that dry for a second. Add a little bit more. Get another coat on it. So add a little bit more paint. Make sure we're getting a good cover on it. Okay, so we're going to let that dry and we're going to clean our gun out. Good thing about the solvent-based paints is they dry extremely fast, extremely quick. So that's not a, don't even really need to heat set it, it dries so fast. And it's kind of warm here in Georgia today. It's going to be almost 80 degrees and I'm in the outside shop, so just going to kind of let it dry on its own. I'm going to do a little bit different on this one. I'm going to put a little bit of silver white pearl on the sides. And that is a House of Color silver white pearl. PVC 49-4Z. It's already got reducer in it. It's already pre-mixed, which that's what I love about the House of Color paints. They're pretty much ready to go. So when I use this here, I'm only going to put this on the sides. I'm not actually going to do the bottom or the top with this, because I'm actually going to be using a color shift on this, a blue purple. So all I'm going to do on this is just do the sides. Just get a little bit of this on the sides just to give it some silvery pop. I didn't do this on the last one I did, but it just does give it a lot better realistic look. I like to leave the belly white, and I'm going to be leaving the top just plain right now, because when I do my stencil work, I'm gonna use black on it. So that just gives it a little bit of a silvery white look, like a bait fish. And before I start doing my stencil work, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put a little bit of gold on there. So I'm going to use some iridescent bright gold fine from Golden. And this is for a customer of mine, Curtis, from North Augusta, South Carolina. So I'm not going to give your whole name, Curtis, out of respect for you. I don't like throwing people's names out here that may not want it thrown. So what we're going to do, I'm going to grab my other gun, and we're going to put some iridescent gold just to do a little bit on the sides. The Blueback's got a hint of gold on its lateral line, and I just want to make sure that we get that on there. I'm going to let it dry just for a second. I spilled some paint on my pants and I'm trying to get it off real quick. All right, so got the gold, and all we're going to do is get our tip cleaned up. We're just going to run a little bit just across here. You can barely see it. By the time I get done doing everything else, you won't see a whole lot of it at all. Okay. So we'll let that dry and clean the gun out. Get our paint put up. All right, so now that we've let it dry, I've gotten my Gerald Mendez stencil out, and we're going to go ahead and put some carbon black in the gun and go ahead and start just getting our design on here. I'm going to line this up. A little bit darker on this. Because I will be using the color shift on this, and I want it just to be a little darker. Alright, so what we'll do is we'll flip it around. I'm not going to do this one upside down. I'm just going to turn the bait and slide it over here where y'all can see it. So we'll just spin the stencil around, kind of line it up on the shoulder. Okay. Still hitting the camera a little bit. So I'm going to set that down, bring it back around, and I'm going to go ahead and just finish doing the top, because I will be using a color shift paint on this. want to be careful not to come down into your stencil work. I don't want to mess that up. And this bait is for a customer, so I'm going to take my time with this. Okay, that's the way I want it. So now what I'll do is go ahead and put my kill dot on here, and I'm just going to freehand it. And I'm kind of going to put it right in the middle of the circle here, so I can line it up. And I'll just spin it around and do the same thing on this side. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put a fin on this one. And we're going to line it up with that hook hanger is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the front of it just to the edge of the hook hanger. So that I can just line it up. Spin that around. Do the same thing on this side. Just turn it where I can get to it. Flip my stencil over. Line it up to the front of the hook hanger. Okay. Let that dry. Set that over there. Go ahead and get a little more black on this top. Let it dry good. All right, now that is dried, and we've gotten a lot of the detail work done. I'm going to come back over it with some blue purple color shift that I've made, and this will kind of really give it a really cool touch. this really gives it the finishing touch on that. Okay. So we're gonna let that dry. All right, so now I'm gonna do a little detail on the sides where that is dried. So we're gonna take some pearl, iridescent white pearl from Golden, put that in the gun. And we're gonna do some scuffing up on these scales down here. Get a little on the gold. These resin baits don't react to it like the plastic does, really. It's a tad bit different. Not bad, but it does react a little bit different to it. The texture of it's just different, that's all. Just has a little bit different of a texture to it. It just gives it that kind of beat up look that a Blueback has. So we'll spin that around, turn it so everybody can see. And we'll do the same thing over here. Make some of them a little bigger, some of them not. Okay. All right, so that is dried. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit of scale pattern on this. We're going to be using just the tip scale from Anarchy Models, and I've put some iridescent silver fine from Golden in the gun. And I don't want to do a bunch on this. I'm just going to do enough to kind of just give it some color. And you can see them, they turn out really cool looking. The iridescent silver does a great job. Gives it just enough. Spin that around. Get it over here where we can see it. Tap our stencil off, make sure it's dry. And we'll do the same exact thing. We'll just lay it up here. Make sure our gun is cleared out. And just get enough scale pattern on it to a little darker than that. Okay. Slide this down a little bit and do the same here. Let that dry. Take a look at it. It gives it a really cool, just enough scale pattern on it to make it cool looking. We'll let that dry. All right, so the bait has dried off, and we've got to take these pieces of tape. This actually came with eyes pre-done on it. So all I did was tape them until I got done. So we're just going to go ahead and take those off. Get this tape up. And that really makes the bait pop. Go ahead and pick this up. And that definitely makes it pop. So I am going to put a few more pieces of tape around this tail before I spray the UVLS, and then we're going to let it dry for a little while, and then we're going to come back and put some 2K clear over this so we can get that handled. So Curtis, I hope you enjoy the bait. I appreciate you letting me do it. So let's go ahead and let's get some UVLS on it. We'll probably just go ahead and go through the whole process. 2K clear everything with this one. It's just going to be in parts, guys. So I've got some UVLS loaded in the gun, and what we're going to do is we're just going to cover the entire bait with it. I think that's going to do it. We'll let that dry for a little while. Then I'll come back on and we'll hit it with some 2K clear.